Hello everyone, this is my first video in a series of videos about Neurographic that I will be making and posting. For more information about Neurographica, you can either Google for it or read the About section of the Neuroart Alchemy Facebook page. This video will be introducing the very basics of Neurographica, so we will be barely scratching the surface of what Neurographica actually is and what it can do. So we are more focused on the art part of Neurographica today. Now I will teach you how to draw neurographic lines, rounding, and freehand drawing of circles. And just as an FYI, the flower picture you see in front of you is called a neurolotus. It's a more advanced algorithm or form of neurographic art that we will not be covering today in this video. So without further ado, let's get to it. So what you will need to make neurographic art is pretty simple actually. For drawing, you could either use art markers or felt tip markers or even a pencil. Just bear in mind that with a pencil, a traditional pencil, you might have to sharpen it very often to get the fine lines that you want. With a marker, you don't really have to do that as much, but try and stick to medium tip markers because they are a little less intimidating than fine tip markers if you're just starting to explore Neuroarts or Neurographica. And for coloring, you can use colored pencils or highlighters, whichever you prefer, or even art marker pens. And what you need to draw on is just paper, plain white paper, or even recycled paper from your unused printing or printing paper that you wanted to throw out. Okay, we will start. So to start, I'm using a medium tip marker, black color. You can use any color you want, whichever you're comfortable with. So basically, when you're drawing a neurographic line, neurographic line is basically like a wavy line with no sharp turns. So basically it's like that. Now except that this line is not a neurographic line because it has a repeating pattern. Neurographic lines have no repeating patterns. So basically the way you can tell if a line is a neurographic line is if you were to start walking from any point on the line and you go along it and you can't predict where you're going next, that would be a neurographic line. So a neurographic line would look like this. It's still a wavy line, but you can't predict where it's supposed to go. So there's no repeating pattern, so to say. So it can go anywhere, it's wavy line, there are no sharp turns. So realize that I'm drawing a very long and windy path with this neural line. You can have a relatively straight neurographic line by doing this. It's still not straight. Neurographic lines are not straight, and there are no repeating patterns. Just bear that in mind. Now you notice that I'm drawing it really fast because I've been doing this for a while, since taking up Neurographic courses. So when you're doing it, you might want to do it slowly, and you can actually get into a meditative state if you draw it really slowly and focus on where you want the line to go. Now, Neurographica is about changing thought patterns. So if you're drawing, when you're drawing a neurographic line, you start, and then when you feel like, oh, I want to go up, instead of going up, you go down or left or right. Go in another direction other than what your brain is telling you to do. So if I'm going up now and I want to go right, I go up instead. And if I want to turn right, I go left. And it's okay to cross over. Now you will find that if you do this for about 15 minutes or so, you will be like in a meditative state. So you actually slip into a meditative state way faster than if you would try meditation. You don't believe me, you can try it on your own and you be the judge for yourself. So you calm down really fast when you're doing this, very slowly, and focus on where you want to take the line. So if you feel like you want to go down instead, turn right or turn left or go up instead, do something other than what your brain is telling you to do, and you will find that you will slip into a meditative state very, very quickly. All right? Now, so this is like the neurographic line is like the very basics of drawing neurographic art, and it's also one of the main things about Neurographica. So when you have intersections like this, we do something we call rounding. I know this is really small, so I'll be doing something bigger so you can see. So I tell my students, I have a couple of students, that when you're doing rounding, it's like doing feng shui for your mind. So let me do slightly bigger. Oh yeah, before I continue, if you're using really thin paper, be aware that your markers are going to transfer over, they're going to bleed through the paper. Like this. It will bleed through if you're using thin paper. Even thick drawing paper like 120 GSM, 135 GSM, you might still get bleed throughs a lot, especially if you're using alcohol markers. If you're using an oil-based marker like this is oil-based. Once you get to paper which are around 220 GSM, they don't tend to bleed through as much. The thicker the paper, the less likely it's going to bleed through. With alcohol markers, they tend to bleed through even at 200 GSM. So just be aware. Have another piece of paper behind us to catch the bleed over. All right, now we're doing intersections. So when you have two neurographic line intersections, we want to do what we call rounding out. Basically, you're drawing like a partial arc in that area where it's a concave arc. All right, and then you want to paint the inside of it like this. Same thing here. Okay. Let me do a couple more to get you comfortable with, or some more. Okay. I'm gonna do it bigger so you can see. On your own Neuroart, you can draw it smaller, like this. But if I do it this small, you can't really see on the camera. So I'm going to do it really big, so you can see better. Okay. So you don't have to go this big when you're doing your Neuroart. You can just do this. Alright? So later when I'm doing a piece of Neuroart, you'll see that I wouldn't be rounding up uh, as big. Alright, so one mistake that a lot of beginners make when they're making Neuroart is when they're drawing in Neuroline, there's a tendency to, when I said change directions when you're thinking that, oh, you're gonna go left, you go up or something. So like, okay, you know, and I've seen this happen a lot. See? So we have like a sharp point here, here, here. So what you can do is either round them off, like, make the line thicker, smooth it out, or join it, do this. Pull a line out from the angle and then make your rounding. So in Neuroart, every line is a thought, or neurographic art at least. Every line is a thought, and every intersection is a conflict. So when you round it out, you're telling your mind that it is okay, you are safe. Okay, so there's another kind of a sharp corner here. I can either round it off like that, I can make a connection to another line. The other way to do this is if you have a corner. Okay, I'm going to make a deliberate corner here. Oh, actually I have two now. So you pull this line all the way to the edge of the paper. And then you do your rounding. So that's basically Neuroart, neurographic lines. Let me round this. Okay. Now, so in neurographic art, or neurographic in particular, we always emphasize on drawing circles with your freehand. We don't use any templates or whatever for drawing the circles. You have to use your freehand, unfortunately. And usually draw circles where you feel like you should be drawing. Like, for example, I might want to draw a circle here. And the way you draw a circle, okay, let's do the basic way first. Let's go practice some simple circle drawing first. You nobody's going to be able to draw perfect circle freehand. So let's leave it at that. But you want to make it look as circular as possible. So you start drawing small circles first, to get a feel of it, and then you just keep going round and round and round and round to make it look as perfect as possible. It's okay if your circle has thick lines. It's okay with that is okay, and then you can just color in the insides of the lines that are white. You have a circle there. So say if I was going to draw a bigger circle here, this is what I'm going to do. It might look like perfect, but it's actually not. But let's just say that I've had more experience drawing freehand circles than if you were to be just starting off. So in this case, when you have a circle here like that, you also have to do your roundings and all the intersection. This is called integrating your picture. So I'm not going to do all the roundings here. So you might have to practice drawing circles quite a bit. Don't do any spirals, circles. So you just keep going, moving in circles until you feel that, okay, the circle looks perfect. Sometimes you screw up, but it's okay. So example, see, this one doesn't look that much like the circle. So I'm going to get the idea. It's not perfect, but it looks circular enough. As long as it looks circular enough to you, you're good to go. And then you just color in the blanks, the blanks inside the lines. And there you have it. These are the basics of neurographics, drawing neurographic basics. So if I were to continue on this piece, I would round these corners. So now I can go smaller, because now that you know how to do the real rounding, I can go smaller because I don't have to show you anymore. And with any piece of neurographic art, you're gonna do a lot of rounding. You might look daunting at first, but after you do it, you feel good. Try it and experience this for yourself. This has been reported by all the students who do Neurographic that the rounding actually helps, eases their tension, helps them relax and feel better. I'm not lying. I would show you the testimonials. I would show you the neuro track from the students of the class I've attended, but I can't because of confidentiality issues. Try it. Okay? So now with the basics out of the way, we can create some neurographic art. But before I go into doing the neurographic art, let's talk a bit about coloring. I mentioned earlier that you can use anything you want to color, even highlighters. Now, there are some rules to coloring. I'll cover it as we go in. And you can use basically any type of coloring materials to do it. But the easiest one is probably either markers or art markers. This type, Copic markers is okay. This is also okay, or any cheap markers. These are easiest because they have a thick head. Copic markers have thick head too, and they have a thin one. So these are good for drawing. And you have a whole bunch of this, you can color with this as well. And with color pencils, get a good quality color pencils. Cheap ones, like the cheapest one I can recommend is probably the Muji Color brand. Alright, so I'm back. So this time we're actually going to do some Neuroart. How do you start? By drawing neurographic lines, or neuro lines in short. And then you draw circles. So with what I've taught you earlier, neurographic lines, rounding, and circles, you can actually start to make neuro art. Oh, before I forget, it might be helpful to you if you have some soothing slow music playing in the background. It will help you to relax even more. So if you've noticed, all the neural lines that I draw always come from the one edge to the other. And that's because when you make neurographic art, you always make connection to the edges of your paper. So even if you're just drawing just circles, let's say if I draw a part of a circle here, in Neurographica, that circle doesn't stop at the edge. You can actually put another piece of paper here and continue that circle and draw the art if you want. But for today, this lesson, we're not going to do that. So we'll just be focusing on just making new art. Alright, so I'm ready to do coloring now. So as I said earlier, there's some rules to coloring in Neurographica. Don't worry if you missed out some corners that you didn't round off. That's okay. You can round them off while you're coloring. You should not do that. So basically when you're coloring, you try to keep your to 4 colors. You can have more if you want, but try to stay with maximum 4 colors, any 4 colors. There is no restriction to which 4 color you can use, which you can't. You can color them in any way that you want. You can even do advanced coloring like shading and all that stuff, but that's fine. Basically, the rules of coloring for Neurographica is this. Rule number 1, try to color in groups of at least 3 shades. Being like, example, 1, 2, 3. Make these one color. You can do more, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do this whole circle in one color. That is fine. As long as there's more than 3 shapes in one color. That's rule number 1. Rule number 1. Rule number 2. You must have at least 2 colors, 2 groups of the same color. Meaning, if I colored this whole circle here, say yellow, then I have to maybe find another patch here, like maybe 1, 2, 3. I have to color it yellow, or even if I choose to color this whole circle yellow. It's for balancing purposes. For when you look at it, your mind will say that, well, it's integrated. And that's what you want. So, rule number 1, color in groups of 3. Rule number 2, there should be more groups. There should be more than 2, at least 2 groups of the same color. Good? Alright. Here we go. So one tip about coloring, the bigger groupings of shapes that you color, you tend to complete your art faster. Meaning that if I chose like, there is no fixed number of groups, it must be at least groups of 3. So if I color this whole circle one color and then another circle here the same color, I have basically like 30% of the artwork done already. If you know what I mean. So if I choose to color each of these circles in like, okay, put this purple, I put this yellow, I make these 2 circles blue, I have 80% of the coloring done. So you see what I mean? So for today, you can do whatever you want, just stick to the 2 rules. All right? I'm all done here. So if you have anything to share, ask questions, please post on the Facebook. Feel free to share your artwork. It's encouraged. And ask questions. Thank you.